Hi, everybody. Welcome to FinTech Fun Talks. Today, we have the president and CEO of InputOne joining us. And for those of you who have not joined the podcast before, we are a Copper Canvas ads agency, and we help FinTechs grow their businesses within a 12-month period. And so, Todd, welcome. Thank you for joining today.
Thanks, Christy. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And so let's just jump right in. We'd like to hear a little bit about yourself and what brought you to InputOne and starting InputOne, if you did start it.
Yeah, technically I didn't. My grandfather did, but when I came
Okay.
on board, I was 16 years old. My grandmother and my grandfather were the only employees, so
Wow.
I joined it with them, and they were already in their 70s at the time. So I kind of have this interesting position that I'm not technically a founder, but we've done so much with the business over the last 40 years since I've been there that it doesn't look anything like what it used to look like. So I
Yeah.
guess we created a lot. And so I guess I would call myself a co-founder. That's probably the most fair way to say it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that sounds right because you've put so much time and effort and so much of your life into it,
Yeah.
having started at 16 years old.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about Input One and what you're doing these days.
Sure. So InputOne is a technology and tech-enabled service and financing platform dedicated to the insurance industry. And the entire ecosystem of products and services that we have deal with the collection of inbound premiums. So any way in which a policyholder can pay for a premium, we have the technology, the financing assets, and the servicing aspects to be able to manage that process. And we manage that for retail agencies, wholesale brokers, MGAs, insurance carriers, and even for banks and other financial institutions.
And I think for people who are not necessarily in this type of industry, you don't realize how complicated those things can be. And so having it housed in one location with the experts taking care of that type of thing is really a big deal.
That's our pitch. That's what we do. I kind of sometimes say to my prospective clients or even my clients, I'm Advil. Let me take care of this. Let me take care of your headache so you guys can go get busy growing your business. That's what we like
I
to do.
like it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Let's talk a little bit about some of those legacy systems. And you have a saying when you talk about the rising of legacy systems. What do you mean by that? And why are they
Well,
more visible or problematic now?
and I'm involved in what is commonly referred to as the InsurTech.
Mhm.
InsurTech is a subsidiary or kind of a portion of the broader fintech umbrella of
Exactly.
companies. I
Yeah.
would say to you that insurance companies are the last vestige of financial services businesses that have digitized, right? You said something earlier about being complex. All of those complexities, whether it be in the manner in which premiums are calculated and claims are calculated and billings are done, all of that coding has been done in legacy systems. And it is so complicated that moving it to more modern digital systems is more difficult. So when I say the rise, imagine this: there's rocks at the bottom of the ocean. If the water level drops, the rocks become there. So assume that the water level is the number of legacy systems left in the broader fintech environment, and as that drops, as banks and brokerage firms and payment companies all tend to lower their legacy systems, the rocks at the bottom are the insurance industry, which is harder
Mhm.
to remove the legacy component from due to its complexity. So that's what I mean by that.
It makes sense, and it is complex. And makes it such a big beast to tackle, to try to make the changes, to try to get up to the same technological level that a lot of your peers in different industries might be in. Beyond financial costs, what are some of those hidden or indirect costs that you're seeing with legacy systems?
There's a couple of things that are very noteworthy. One of which is that no system does everything.
Mm,
So the ability for one system to have interoperability capability with another system is really critical, or integration. The frequency with which people talk about APIs and how you can integrate with other
yeah.
systems is important. Core old legacy systems don't have that same level of interoperability that newer systems do. They don't talk to other systems easily. Instead of being able to use webhooks or API, they exchange data via text files. Right? That's what happens. You're trying to get data out of a system on an AS400. It's much harder to use that for webhooks and APIs than it is for if you have cloud-based systems.
Yeah.
The degree of complexity and difficulty in getting that integration with more modern systems to help you expand your feature set is a very important hidden cost. Another one is, just like you remember the days when people used to program in COBOL, and as time went on, what would happen is that people would say, "I can't find anyone that can program in COBOL anymore." Well, that's the same thing that's happening now. If you try to go and you hire out of the workforce people to program in database systems that were built back in the 70s and 80s, they may still run on PCs, but who's going to program them, right? So you
Mhm.
end up having a very difficult time finding people. Your universe of people that you can hire is much smaller. That tends to be an aging workforce. So they
Yep.
may be very capable coders and developers in the language in which they are experts, but they may not have the knowledge of all of the newer systems that are out there. So it makes it difficult to keep the systems maintained. And in the prior point that I said, it makes the systems difficult to integrate with others. And I will tell you, those are table stakes. If you can't keep your system up to date and expand the feature set and you can't integrate with other systems, you're out of business in a period of time.
You bring up an interesting point. The fact that languages change, our development languages change, and people who program in certain languages do age out of more. They're ready to retire.
Yep, that's right.
This is a never ending problem. What do you foresee happening, or how could we resolve that type of problem? Protect ourselves or prepare ourselves for future changes and upgrades that we need to make.
On one point, one element of that is that you always have to build a system assuming that it's going to need to change and adapt. So,
Hmm.
it's just like you, if you were going to build a house and you thought that the house was never going to get bigger, you would build it one way. But if you built a house and saying, you know what, I might want to make this house bigger later, you'll probably build it a different way, or you'll make
Mm.
tweaks to it. So similarly, you architect the software so that it is more agile and able to change as it grows. So I think that's an important part of it. The other thing is this: you can build the best system in the world. You're going to be rebuilding it in 10 to 15 years or less. So part of the first thing I told you is there's one way to address it. But the truth is, in the long run, there's no way to address it other than to rebuild it, because there will always be new languages and there will always be
Yeah.
new, younger people. As the older ones who know the older languages age out of the workforce and you want to create a perpetuation scheme within your business, you need to redevelop your software every 10 to 15 years is probably at the later end of that. And when you redevelop it, you're going to redevelop it in the newer language. So therefore, you're going to have access to the new folks. So you can do it, and maybe you can stretch that 10 or 15 years to 20 years because you're more agile and you can easily add on and modify it. But at the end of the day, you're going to come to a point where it's still an older code base. You're going to have limitations, and you got to rebuild it. Most of these companies need to start rebuilding it 5 years before they need the product, because that's how long it takes to rebuild one of
Exactly.
these things. You got to run your business, and you got to amend and modify your system to keep up with competition, and you got to rebuild a new one at the same time. So there's a constant cycle of reinvestment with people.
You're a president and CEO. You've been with this business for quite some time. You have seen that play out over and over again. I'm sure you are at a stage now where you are able to think of those things in advance, even though it is a lot to balance with maintaining the business and keeping customers happy.
Right.
And I liked your analogy about the house too. We can definitely be forward thinking and future thinking in the way that we architect things and the way that we plan. Before we leave legacy systems, are you seeing it impacting customer experience or competitiveness?
It does, to the extent that you have a diminished capacity to provide user self-service. Legacy systems were not built when there was an environment in which you could put up what's now commonly referred to as a user portal, same way you'd see from the bank or for your app on your phone. It's much harder to get a legacy system to support an app or a mobile website than it is a newer generation cloud-based system. And if you are not able to keep up with user optionality, let most of us want to do things online on our phone and move on. We
Mhm.
don't want to call people. We don't want to wait for it. We just get me what I need to get. Let me move on with my life. So that to me is the biggest issue connected to that. It is such a priority to give people optionality and do it quickly and to adapt. And it's much harder to do. And that leads to poor user experiences. And then people leave. And, that's really what it comes down to. So I think that's such an overwhelming element. It would overshadow virtually everything else related to legacy systems.
That makes sense. Thinking of it as a consumer, I definitely like taking the path of least resistance. And I like having things easily accessible at my fingers. So you can see how that would impact that customer experience. Moving on to cloud based systems, what do you feel like makes that a better alternative overall to legacy platforms?
Well, there's a couple of things. In the old environment where you would have a license to use a software system or you built it yourself and you're storing it on your own servers, you are taking the security elements at hand. There is physical security and logical security, right? Physical security is the server in a locked room, and is it air conditioned, and make sure that the room's not going to leak and all that kind of stuff. And is
Yeah.
there going to be power and backups? And there's the logical, which are the firewalls and all of the cybersecurity that has to go along. It's so much less expensive to go and call up AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud and say, they already have these infrastructure systems in place. So you don't have to worry about that. You're not worried about an earthquake, say earthquake because I'm from LA, right? But you got
Yeah.
fire, you got any number of things, you got biohazards. I mean, any number of things could impact the ability for your server to operate. But having it out in the cloud at a cloud farm is really a big deal. And then, by the way, like in our case, there are certain types of business continuity parameters that you have. If you're going to have two sites, one is the primary, one's the backup, they need to be a certain amount of miles away from one another.
Yes.
So we have sites where, there's a Microsoft, we use Azure. There's a Microsoft Azure site somewhere in the East Coast. Maybe it's in the Northeast. And then our backup site is in the Southeast or in the Midwest. It's 1,500 miles away. So anything that's going to impact one area is not going to impact the other, which means that I can just shut off the primary one and flip on the other one. And they're being backed up, by the way, and replicated every 5-6 minutes or something like that. So that's what is it? That's RTO for recovery time objective, and the other one,
Yes.
RPO. The point is that you're not going to lose much data in that point. So that's a big part of it. Also, there are times when we're running our systems and we find them to be slow. Now, sometimes that has to do with efficiencies in the SQL commands and stored procedures and things that the databases are not designed correctly. So you could tweak that and you can logically modify that. But sometimes you just don't have enough CPU power or enough hard drive space to handle all of the cycles that the machine needs to go through. You call up Azure and you said, add me 5 more servers, give me 50 more gigabytes or 50 more terabytes or whatever it is, and boom. And within hours, you have it. Or a server, they monitor the servers. If the servers crash, they have backups that bring servers online. So there's just a million things that we had to manage ourselves when we were managing the physical servers as opposed to being in the cloud. So just having your systems up there it allows you to say, most of this is handled. Now I can go focus on the more important things about growing my business.
It reminds me of what you were saying earlier about your business model and being able to come in and tell people, let me take care of all of these details and you go do your business, go take care of it. And I think we're seeing that happen a lot more based on the people that I've been talking to, where we're compartmentalizing things in this way. Like, let the experts take care of what they are expert at. I don't need to learn how to be expert at that. I don't need to bother with it anymore. I can focus on the things that I do. And I remember those days, the data centers or the server rooms and all the things you had to do to just make sure everything was okay.
That's right.
In terms of performance, where are cloud solutions really shining compared to legacy?
Well, in terms of performance, it's just a matter of putting aside for the moment that the performance is not controllable by inefficient code, and that's something that you can always fix. But with the cloud systems, you can always add logical CPUs and you can add greater hard drive space. And systems need hard drive space not just to store information; they use it to actually run procedures. And so, because they have to dump data out to the hard drives and then pull it back, you can add that, you can upgrade that with the snap of a finger, because these cloud farms have built these massive locations that allow you to access more units of logical servers and logical CPUs. The ability to scale the hardware to get efficiency levels that you need is very easy to do.
Yeah, that's a big benefit too. What are some common misconceptions that people have when they're moving from legacy to cloud-based systems?
I think we all have a natural tendency to say that if I can't go look in the room where the server is, that I'm worried about it. Is it going to be there? And is it going to work correctly? Hopefully that notion is being disputed more and more as time goes on. But listen, insurance, it can be a stodgy industry, and there's a lot of people that have been around for decades and have different viewpoints on that, and they might be wary of putting in the cloud. Maybe they think that it's going to somehow have less security. That's a big misnomer. It does not have less security. Our technology department, they're managing servers 3,000 or 2,500 miles away with more efficiency than they were if they were in the room over here. So I think that this notion of that they're fearful of it not being there, and they're worried that it's out there in some huge bunker building somewhere that maybe it's more exposed. So I think that's a misnomer. Perhaps there's a misnomer about the fact that, well, if the server's in my office, the data is going to get to my machines faster and I'll be able to be more efficient. Whereas if it's over the internet, it's got to come across the cable at 2,500 miles in order to get the data responses. That's also a complete misnomer. We have seen no degradation. Of course, we've been doing this now for 20 years, but we see no degradation. In fact, we see improvements in the efficiency and speed of systems that are cloud-based.
Yeah, and those definitely are big and so easy to have that misconception. We like to have control over things. And so passing that on to someone else takes a leap of faith sometimes. But I would say, to your point, these cloud companies, it's their whole business. And if they are not secure, if they are not fast, if they have data breaches, anything along those lines, it's going to impact their business. So they're doing everything they can to make sure you're getting the best service possible.
That's right.
When transitioning to cloud, how important is it for customers to identify bespoke elements of their business that will need customization?
I don't put this as a priority because
Mm,
whatever your system does, whether it's running in its own machine environment at your office or it's running in a cloud environment, the bespoke elements of the software are most likely already built into the software. You're talking about the location where it's running. I don't think that's as much of it. If you're moving from a legacy system to a cloud system, you may, as we talked earlier, you may not have a lot of that interoperability. The system may not handle the environment in a cloud, which is intended to allow more people to access it and ease of use with integrations. So those elements, perhaps, but those are primarily just legacy elements. We build software and we enhance our software all the time, and we've got thousands and thousands of hours of development going into our software, customizing it every single month. We have no issue about all of the bespoke nature of our software being handled.
nice. That's good to hear. It takes a little bit of the load off your back when you know that that's not going to be an issue. And for those that are listening to know that, hey, you can jump into this with the same type of peace of mind. So integrated payments, you mentioned that InsurTech is very much a part of the fintech ecosystem as well as payments. And we have found that integrated payments are something that a lot of companies are doing to create a seamless experience for their customers and clients. So how are those integrated payment systems changing the insurance industry?
Gosh, where do I begin with this one? Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you a fact that will probably blow you away. But 50%
Okay.
of the policyholder buying public still writes
Yeah.
checks and mails it to their insurance company, right? Something
That
like
is
that. Yeah,
surprising.
yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
crazy, right? It's a lot. Um, just like anything else, right? When I buy from Amazon, I need to know I've got my PayPal, I've got my Amazon wallet up there. I can choose any option I want. I can choose PayPal and then select which credit card or bank account inside of PayPal. I don't have to remember anything. I don't have to have a checkbook. I can lay in bed, get a text message that says my insurance payment is due, and I can go online or I can click the link and it pops up and I make the payment. So it's having a huge impact as it did in all the other type of
Yeah.
businesses that use integrated payments. But there are greater ramifications to missing a payment in insurance than there are, for example, making your credit card payment. If you don't make your credit
Right.
card payment, nobody wants a late fee. No one wants extra interest, but it's late fee and interest. If I don't make my insurance payment and I have a car accident the next day, that is a much bigger deal. So
Yeah.
having payments integrated in the insurance transaction affords policyholders a higher level of protection against a possible unwanted or unexpected cancellation. That's a really, really important thing. Also, there's another part, and that most people, when they think about insurance payments, they always think about the inbound. There's the outbound too. Insurance
Oh,
companies
yes.
have to pay claims just like they collect
Yes.
payments. Well, imagine if you were the unfortunate victim of a hurricane in North Carolina, comes in, floods your home, you have no electricity, your home is inhabitable, you had to run out of your home and get in a boat to get out to save your family. You have no money on you. How are you
Hmm.
going to get the money to go and get to a hotel? You're going to have to get far, and you have to buy clothing, you have to buy food. So insurance companies are just starting to. This is a new thing that's happening now. Is digital outbound claims, where insurance companies can send you a virtual card on your phone, because obviously the phones are sending you the data via satellite, so you don't even have to have any power other than to recharge your phone. You can now get a virtual debit card on your phone, go into a store and buy food, buy clothing, check in, pay for a hotel room. That's a big deal.
Big deal.
So that's another area where integrated payments is helping on the outbound side of insurance as well.
That's really cool. I hadn't thought about that outbound side, but if I were in that situation, I would definitely appreciate that. That's an amazing benefit and something that is new and moving us as a society forward to be able to handle those difficult types of situations.
That's
So
right.
I want to go back, Todd, a little bit to your comment about the number of people who are still sending in checks. Is that a certain demographic or geographic area? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this. It's because the next question is about subscription-based models, and you really can't get people who are paying with checks to really be efficient with these subscription based models. So I'm just curious. Question number one, who are these people and how do we get them over to this?
Well, in some cases, it's the insurance companies that don't
Oh,
even have
okay.
the option. Some of them are
Yeah.
starting, more and more are adopting it, and they're all realizing if they don't get digital payments built into their infrastructure, whether they buy it or build it in some way, they're going to be in a whole lot of hurt. So they're doing it
Yeah.
more and more. But even in my business, where we're doing billing and collections for payments all over the country, that we see, of course, it's probably not surprising. There's certain areas where the population is a little bit older. If you're dealing
Mm.
in more rural areas where people might have a greater distrust for technology, I would imagine that
Okay.
people in Palo Alto, California, are not as worried about technology and sending a payment over the wire as people in Western Kentucky, right? I think it's
Okay.
just
Yeah,
natural.
that makes sense.
It's a natural thing. So we do see older populations and populations in rural areas that have a lower adoption rate for digital payments. But again, they also had lower adoption rates for the internet, but now people, almost everybody has it. So I
They're
think it's
getting
just a
there.
matter of time,
Yeah,
right? It's just a matter of time
that's
before that's
true.
going to happen. So I answered your question, but I want to be clear that we're clear on it.
Yes.
One of them is because the insurance companies aren't offering the technology, and one of them is because
Mhm.
of the population or the
That makes sense. Interesting. And it's like it brought to mind the phases that we see with all technology. You've got the innovators, the early adopters, and then the kind of middle ground who are like, oh, yeah, we're adopting this. And then the trailers. And that's just the way it is with every new technology. So, are you seeing a push for more of these subscription based models, trying to encourage adoption, that type of thing?
We do. The best way to pay for an
Mhm.
insurance premium is the same way you pay for your mortgage. Put it on auto pay and leave me alone,
Yeah.
right? Just make sure I don't default on my mortgage or my insurance, but or my car loan. I don't want to deal with the prospects of a default. So we're seeing an increasing level of adoption on what we call recurring payments. People signing up to pay their bill automatically every month by credit card, by ACH debit, Google Pay, Apple Pay, whatever it might be. Of course, all of the payments systems like mine that we sell to insurance carriers and MGAs and agents, they're all subscription based models. So the agent signs a contract with us, or the carrier does, and has us run their payments business for them for 2 or 3 years, or 4 years, whatever they choose to have it. So it's both happening at the buyer side. The insurance entity is subscribing to the service, and the policyholders are subscribing to an auto pay service. So there's no question that there is a massive movement to adoption of these recurring mechanisms to supply and utilize digital payment rails within the insurance landscape.
And it's such a nice thing once people realize that they can trust it, that there are fail safes in place. You can't run any business in the payments world without having the types of filters and protections in place for people to protect their data, their personally identifiable information, all of those things. So once they know they can trust it, I think it just takes a load off of everyone's back. Like you said, you can just let it go and not think about it again until
You
you
know
get
what?
that mortgage paid off.
That's right. What people don't always think about is that it's more likely that somebody will go to your mailbox,
Hmm.
break it open, and steal a claim check that an insurance company gave to you, or a bank account statement, and try to go get into your bank account statement than it is if you transmit money wirelessly or digitally by Venmo or by Zelle, or through whatever kind of a payment model or methodology the insurance company has. So there's a psychology connected to that.
There is.
We've had to, with my mom and my mother-in-law, they were having problems. People were actually breaking into their mailboxes and taking their bank statements and trawling their banks and trying to take money out. And I'm thinking, you got to shut that off.
Yeah.
Stop getting paper statements. Get it all digitally via email.
Yes.
Stop mailing checks out. Stop receiving checks, right? That
Hmm.
all of that stuff is fraught with far more danger and risk than
Yes.
sending things digitally. But there is a psychology to it, like with anything else. There's any number of examples of why psychology is a critical part of people's adoption of various
Yeah.
new technologies.
And can be a big hindrance. And then you think of your car accident scenario, how many accidents happen much more often due to human error. So it's similar in that
Yeah,
way.
that's right.
I'm curious about your opinions on the role that AI is playing in the transition to modern tech platforms, specifically in insurance.
It will have a increasingly important impact on the industry as time goes on. There are certainly early elements of AI.
Mhm.
There are They're human service elements. So like when people call up, you have AI chatbots and you have AI agents that are taking questions that used to be taken by human beings. It's interesting. I was just in New York on a panel about this subject, and
Interesting.
they asked, of course, about the involvement of AI in this. In anticipation of that, because it was a discussion about younger generation, Gen Y, Gen Z,
Hmm.
when I actually interviewed some folks and they said, look, the problem that we have with the way that AI is being implemented in certain areas is that we know it's a chatbot. And we already know when we start asking those questions, once we run out of what I told you earlier, those self-service options that you build into your portals, if I have to go to a question, I'm pretty sure that an AI chatbot's not going to be able to answer that question, right? And that's frustrating to them. So I think that we have to be thoughtful in the manner in which we bring AI into this. Generative AI, where the systems are actually learning, they're listening to human questions, seeing if they can handle it or not, and then learning from that and getting better is really, really important. But we're not quite there yet. I was just watching CNBC this morning, and they were talking about AI in the environment, and they were saying one of the problems with AI is that it doesn't generalize. Sometimes you and I, as human beings, will look at a problem, we'll try to break it down into its component parts, but then we take a step back and we say, but is this really helping the overall situation? And that's
Right.
where AI is not there yet. It can dig down deeply. It can find every piece of human data available on the internet, cull it down to a solution to a specific problem. But it doesn't have the ability to step back and say, is this really handling everything that I want? I wrote an article for the Forbes Finance Council a couple of months ago called AI Whitewashing. And that's where you basically call things AI that aren't. I'm a developer back from when I was 16. I can write if-then statements. Computers are making its own decision based upon a preset formula. Is that AI?
Yeah.
Of course it's not AI. It's just
Right.
I told it if this, then do that, and if that, then do
Hmm.
this, right? But I have a competitor that was one day they were advertising their products. The very next week, every single backdrop on every conference that they were at had the letters AI in front of it. So, to me, I looked at it and I'm like, well, I hope that everyone else sees, what this really is. I only say that because I'm not an anti-AI person. I'm not
Yeah.
afraid of AI, but
Yeah.
I think that people need to be realistic about it. What can it do? What can't it do today? And how do we get it to do it more tomorrow? And then how do we take what it can do today and meaningfully bind it or weave it into our business processes and our technology so that we can use it in a productive way? So it's very early stages.
It is.
I have no doubt it's going to improve later, but right now I think there's maybe high, low level and maybe low, moderate levels of AI involvement in the insurance transaction. And I do expect that to rise over time.
I think that as it rises, it will be level by level, piece by piece. I think that there's a lot of fear surrounding AI and it coming in and sweeping in quickly and taking everybody's jobs. And it's just not going to be that way. It's similar to, and I'm dating myself here, similar to when the internet became readily available and people had the same fear at that time, like, oh, this has so much knowledge and information. What am I needed for? But there's always going to be that need for the human rationality, the ways to think through things that machines just can't. And maybe they'll get there eventually, but there will still always be something that we need to do to partner with it. Essentially, I
Yeah.
feel like we're partnering with it. We can use the information we find on the internet, we can use the information and the tools that we get from AI, but it's still at the hands of humans.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very excited about the things that it's going to bring to the table, and I want to adopt them when it makes sense to. But I want to be very thoughtful about that.
Yeah. Do you feel like there are any AI offerings or capabilities that you specifically are excited about?
One of the things I really like to do is if we're looking at financial statements or if we're reading insurance policies, it used to be where if I wanted to read an insurance policy, it might be an 80-page document. And there
Yeah.
could be any number of complexities within that document that
Yeah.
it would take me hours and hours. I can now throw that document into an AI and it comes back with a summary of everything in it. Or if I'm reading the 10K for a publicly traded company and I'm trying to underwrite something about that company, it'll come back and tell me what the forecasts are, what the earnings are. I mean, and so instead of having to read an 80-page document, I can read a 20-point bullet list and I can get this done much faster. So I really like the way in which AI can take a lot of data and cull it down to something that I can more easily digest and effectively digest to achieve my goal. That's something I really enjoy using.
That's a good use case. I'm actually going to have to do that. I was thinking about my homeowner's insurance policy. I'm like, I really don't know all of the things that that covers. How can I make sure that I know all the details? So I'm going to go and do that after we finish here.
You should throw it into ChatGPT. You'd be surprised at what it'll tell you. It's really quite
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to a leader who knows their legacy system is a problem, but they don't know where to start?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is start to look at what's available. Don't do ready, fire, aim, right?
Mm.
What is the problem you're looking to solve? Moving from legacy to somewhere else, that's too general. What are you looking to solve? I'm having trouble with finding developers. I'm having trouble with interoperability with systems. I'm having trouble with the sluggish response of my systems. The overhead connected to running my server farm or in my server room is too high, whatever it might be. What are you trying to solve? And then I would look at, there is a tremendous marketplace available of lots of solutions. So be thoughtful about that process. Then also one thing I always find is that part of our business is we do sell software to companies for various functions of their business. And what we're always surprised by the number of problems or the number of workflows that people think these systems will solve without any modifications, with no adjustments to the system. And so they think that, oh, good, I can go buy the system and in 90 days or 120 days, it's going to be up and running. Be thoughtful about the nuances of your business. Approach the analysis of the new system or the effort you're undertaking. Approach it as if the new system doesn't do anything that you want it to do, and then ask the questions so that you know where the gaps
Mm.
are, so that you don't end up going forward with far less information that you need and then realizing, oh my gosh, I'm hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars over budget and I'm going to be done 6 to 18 months later than I thought. Computers are not
Mhm.
systems, no matter how good they are. We have a great system, but people still modify it all the time to get competitive advantage or to help with workflow efficiency. That's something that's really important.
That's a really good way to approach it, and things that people wouldn't necessarily think about. Your experience in that is definitely valuable. And I do have one more question, and that is, what does the future of insurance technology look like to you in the next 5 to 10 years?
5 years is a fairly short period of time. There will be more. There'll be more artificial intelligence brought into the process. Certainly, a greater ability to manage the entire insurance transaction on the web, so that you don't have to talk to people as much until you really run into a problem that a computer can't solve for you. And there's some that folks that are calling for the fact that you won't even think about it anymore. If you buy a car, it comes included in insurance. You buy a home, it's got
Oh,
insurance included. If you buy this, I'm not sure if I agree with that. I could see that, right? Well, someone's going to build a brand new a community of homes, maybe in southern Utah, where there
yeah.
isn't a community now, right? And they could say, look, we're going to build 1,000 homes, and all these homes are going to be wired up, and we're all going to offer the insurance for all of them, and that's a possibility. So you could see more the embedding of insurance into product purchases. They're starting to do this now. You might be able to buy insurance only for when you need it. Like when your car is sitting in the garage, you don't need collision insurance because you're not driving it, but you might need air insurance because the battery might catch on fire or something. So they're talking about notions of where you could get that, really narrow it down and not buy insurance for things you're not going to use. And when the car drives, you're buying more insurance. When you're driving it less, you're buying less insurance. Today, your insurance company asks you, how many miles are you driving a year? Okay, I drive 12,000 miles a year. And then they rate your policy predicated on that. But
Yeah.
what if you're really
Yep.
only driving 7,000 miles a year? What if you're driving 20? Shouldn't the person
Mhm.
driving 20 pay more than the person who's driving 7? Sure.
Yeah.
Embedding insurance into vehicles, into homes like that, I think that makes a lot of sense. And IoT is going to serve that purpose because a device inside the car will let you know when is it driving, when it is not, how many miles has it driven, how fast are they speeding and slowing down, some of
Mhm.
which they're already doing. So you'll see some more of that insurance that's being bought as it's needed.
Yeah. Interesting concepts. And the buying as it's needed will really allow people to customize specific to their needs. I like that. Interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thanks for taking the time today, too. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed it very much.
Thanks for watching our podcast today. I'm Kristen Nielsen. I'm the owner of Copper Canvas Ads Agency, and we partner with fintechs to help them scale their business within a 12-month period. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, and I've seen how saturated the market can be, and therefore how difficult it can be to make your business stand out in a sea of other fintechs that may look similar or maybe even slightly different. But how do you make yours stand out? How do you get your message to the right people and those with high buying intent? That's what Copper Canvas Ads Agency is here to do. We are a growth partner, and we take a deep dive into your business to really understand what your strong points are, where there may be areas of weakness, and how we can fill those areas of weakness and create a plan to move forward in a strong way and really scale. So if you are interested, simply go to our website, coppercanvasadsagency.com, and schedule a time. There are buttons right there on the front page for you to book a time, and then we'll love to talk to you and see what we're able to do together.